Hello. Okay, so this message might be all over the place. I'm just going to start off with that, so just bear with me, okay? I'm just going to try and say the things. The Lord's giving me 100 different little bits and pieces, so I'm just going to go off how he's showing it to me, okay? So he's saying there's going to be an us versus them. That's what it's going to come down to, is us versus them. The Lord has already awakened a lot of the people that are needing to be awakened. Whether it be because they are part of the 144,000 and they're going to heaven, they're part of the elite group, and so they needed to be in preparation, in position for that. Or if it's not even that all to that, but that they're meant to go to heaven, they needed to be prepared, because I talked in the past word about how you have to be, he qualifies the called, right? You have to be qualified to get into heaven, especially when you're in this sinner's vessel, okay? Some of these people are God is letting these people do what they're doing. There is nefarious evil agendas at work, and has been at work. We know this in the governments, specifically in Russia, Putin, America, Trump, and Canada, Carney, okay? I don't necessarily believe that Trump is, I'm not going to go there because Trump is a wild card, okay? But I know for sure that Carney and the liberal government has a negative evil agenda. They are literally working for the devil, whether they are doing it intentionally or unintentionally, okay? But every move they've made, the whole government, it's corrupt, it's a setup, we all know this already, it's been a set up, corrupt situation. I've been saying this forever about Canada and the government, okay? There is a setup. They have an agenda. They've had it pre-COVID days. This is why the Liberal Party had won 3 or 4 terms in a row, and we knew that something didn't make sense. That's because it didn't make sense. This is all a setup, okay? Everything has been a setup. They have an agenda to try to ruin Canada. It's already underway. Ruin people. It's already underway. Ruin quality of life. It's already underway. This is their agenda. God is allowing the government to do these things. So God was showing me that perspective. Then there's people's perspective. People are wondering, specifically Christians, but people in general are wondering, why is the government poisoning our food source? Why is the government not allowing us to have doctors? Why is the government driving up the cost of living, right? In the past, they used to create excuses for why these things were occurring, like COVID and war at Russia and all this stuff. They're not even bothering to do that anymore. Now they've graduated to the next level where they're just going ahead and doing stuff how they see fit. Every single thing that's happened already and happening currently is from an evil, mastermind, manipulative mindset, right? So you would ask, why is the Lord letting this happen? I don't know, because the Lord was showing me World War II. Why did the Lord allow Hitler to do what he did to a point, right? The Lord was showing me what would have happened. Hitler had an agenda similar to like the Canadian government and other governments, okay? Had an agenda of how he wanted things to go. He wanted to basically have domination, whether that was in that country, in his area, in the world, just domination in general, and how far reaching it could go was all the more the better, okay? The Lord was correlating Hitler and his mentality and his drive and his motivations, likening it to like Carney and the Liberal government in Canada, is that it's a similar way, but it's not done in the same context or fashion that it was back in the 30s. It's being done in a more in your face, but yet methodical, subtle approach, okay? In your face, but behind the scenes at the exact same time. There is so much going on behind the scenes. Out of 100% behind the scenes, we're only seeing maybe 20-30% of it. There is an agenda playing at work, and it's been going off without a hitch. Now, they wanted to be further in this agenda by now, okay? Just like Hitler wanted to eventually start small and build up and take over more and more. Hitler did a lot of damage, he did. But what would have happened if he hadn't been stopped? This is what the Lord was saying to me. There was 2 ways the world could have went. Hitler never happening, Hitler happening and him being stopped when he was, or the flip side, what if Hitler was never stopped? What if it never happened? He already done so much damage, but what if he hadn't been stopped in his tracks and got to fulfill his total plans, okay? The Lord said that the world today is similar to what happened in World War II. We haven't fought an official World War III battle yet. We've been waiting for it. We've heard rumors of war, but we are fighting it spiritually. It's already broke out, okay? It is the awakened versus the unawakened, the government versus the citizens, the civilians, okay? God is saying that God allowed Hitler to do what he did to a point, and people wonder why he did, but he had to, and I'm not going to get into all of it, but it was to do with the Jews specifically. It's not like Hitler was targeting, just like Swiss people or something, you know what I mean? He was specifically targeting the Jews. And so there's something to do with that the Lord basically allowed to happen. If Hitler had been doing what he's doing, maybe in a different context, but there's a symbolic spiritual connotation over the fact that it was the Jewish people. But God didn't let it go all the way, because Hitler had his own evil secret agenda, led by the devil, obviously, to do more and more and more, okay? He wanted, what it was for mostly was control and domination, is what the Lord is saying. So God could have not let Hitler start in the first place, but he let Hitler do what he did to a point, and then he stopped him, because if the Lord hadn't stopped him, it would have went far worse than it actually was, than it already was, okay? The Lord is saying that the same thing is playing right now, is that this can go either way. The government that I've already named, similar idea, has this idea of total control and domination. This is the 2025 version, okay? It's reenacting what happened 100 years ago-ish with Hitler today. God is allowing it to happen to this point because it's, again, just like with the Jews and Hitler, it's prophecy playing out. There's a spiritual connotation why it's happening. So many people are seeing this and thinking that this is the end of days. And I'm not specifically saying it's not. But what I am saying is the Lord was saying that in World War II with Hitler and everything, they thought that was the end of days. So back in the 30s when World War II was playing out, the people alive back then thought that was the end of days, because they were familiar with the Bible back then as well, okay? And here we are almost 100 years later, and obviously it wasn't the end of days. So we never know the time or the hour. Now, we know that wasn't the end of days because it's been 100 years almost later, and obviously the world's still here, right? But at the time, a lot of them thought that World War II and everything that was going on was the start of the end of days as well. So fast forward now to 2025, we think it's the end of days playing out. And I'm not saying it's not. But what I am saying is it's possible that we think it is, just like they thought it was in World War II, just like how we're going through the spiritual World War III. We think this is the end of days like they did, and 100 years could go by from now, right? And obviously it wasn't. It could be 2125, 100 years from now, and obviously it wasn't the end of days. You see what I'm saying? The Lord is saying it could go either way. There was a prime time when the World War II was going on where Hitler thought, and it appeared to him and to everybody else, that he might have the upper hand, that he was going to, it was the start of end of days, it was just going to unravel from there and get worse and worse, and he was going to start to take global domination, okay? That may have seemed like that may have been Hitler's agenda, and that may have seemed like what was to be in store, right? At the time, it made sense that everyone was on the same page. But as we know, that Hitler was stopped and so was the war, and then things turned the opposite way, and they rebuilt and they came back from it and stuff, right? The Lord is saying we're in the same position again today, almost 100 years later, where we're in the same boat, where we have government and people in power trying to create this, global domination control thing, and they're following similar wartime tactics like poverty and crime and an uptick in these and disease and sickness and things like this, okay? They're following a lot of the same statutes and ways or whatnot that they did back in Hitler days, just in a modern day version. And it's in our face, but not as brazenly in our face as it was with World War II, okay? This same thing as Hitler's war, this could go either way. This could either go towards full domination, full control, and lead us into the end of days and go the way today in 2025 that Hitler wanted things to go back in the 30s. And basically the world will go to hell in a handbasket and we'll watch the book of Revelations and the end of days play out, right? Maybe. But the Lord is saying not necessarily. It could, no matter how bad it seems or looks or gets, no matter how bad it starts to get or seem or look, it can go the way where we get on the other side of things, like what happened with Hitler. So for instance, Carney could go all the way. So say on a scale of 1 to 10, he wants to hit an 11 out of 10. And say thus far he's only hit a 5 or a 6, and he feels like he's still got a ways to go. It's true, he could, in his eyes and in citizens' eyes, go for 11 out of 10. It's possible for complete domination, like in his agenda, that this is what he wants to do, okay? But on the other hand, there's a chance that it might not, he's at, say, 5 or 6 out of 10, and he's shooting for the 11. He might only get a 7 or an 8, and then things turn around. So just like what happened with Hitler's war, it could go right, it could go left, it could go up, it could go down, it could go this way, it could go that way, forward, back, right? It was at that weird limbo state where it could have went forward full speed ahead all the way, or it could have stopped dead in its tracks. And even if it stops dead in its tracks, there can be a rebuilding and a resurrection, the Lord is saying. Hallelujah. And so the Lord is saying, just like how once upon a time with Hitler's war, it looked like it was full steam ahead and that there was no hope in sight, and that it was the end of days playing out, it turned out to be that that wasn't the case at all, that actually God let it go for a time, and then he rose up. It wasn't God himself, but he rose up through opposers, opposition, the Lord is saying. Hallelujah. So basically, Hitler's plan was governed by the devil, and of course we know the devil works for God, so God allowed the devil to work through Hitler to give him those thoughts and actions in the first place, because there was like a spiritual symbolism about the Jews and everything that had to be done that way, okay? Just like how God allowed Jesus to die on the cross, he allowed the same thing to happen, okay? Just because prophecy has to play out. But it only got to a certain point. Jesus only suffered for half the day, not a full day. People wanted him to suffer on the cross for 1, 2, 3 days straight. He didn't. He suffered on the cross, but only for a half a day, like 6 hours, right? From 9 till 3 or something. The same things happened with Hitler, was that he wanted to go for 100% and he only got 50 and was stopped in his tracks. Carney and the Canadian government and other governments want to go for 100%. They're all in on this modern day 2025 World War III being fought in a methodical, mental, and spiritual way. Physical too, but not the same with combat, okay? They want to go 100%. God has allowed them to do things thus far. He may continue to let them to do things even further. That's why people are believing it's the end of days and we're just going to get worse as we go. And I'm not saying we won't. I can't say which way it's going to go. It could go right, it could go left, it could go forward, it could go back, up or down. I don't know. It's up to God, okay? But God is saying there is hope in sight, because he was saying there was hope to the Jews, and we now know 100 years later there was hope to them, right? Because Hitler didn't get to fulfill everything he had in mind. And so God is saying, while everything looks dark, there could be a silver lining here. It could go either way, but there could be hope ahead, where this agenda has gone on thus far and may continue to go even further, but that God will stop it in its tracks, right? Just like he did back in Hitler's days, okay? By rising up opposition. So Carney and Hitler have something in common, and the governments, they're not the only ones involved, but others, where they thought that they were in control of what they're saying, doing, acting, they don't think that God or the devil's driving them. They think that this is all their own plans. Just like Hitler, he wasn't sitting there saying, oh, devil's making me do it. He thought it was right in his mind. He thought the things he was doing was right. He thought it was justified, because God was giving him the thought process to think like that and think that it was okay, even though we all know it wasn't, right? But God was in control of that whole thing. So even though Hitler thought he was in control and he wasn't paying homage to God or the devil, it was God that was in control the whole way through. This is what people need to understand, is that even the devilish demonic things, God controls those things too. Nothing goes above God. So even though the devil or his agent jumped in Hitler and said, okay, be like this, think like this, say like this, do this, God's the one that permitted that to happen in the first place. Because the devil can't make a move without God's authorization. So if God allowed Hitler to do A, B, C and be ran by the devil in this way, that way, God allowed the devil to move in such a fashion, to move Hitler in such a fashion. You understand? God is also allowing the devil to move Carney and whoever else, Putin, whoever else, in such a fashion, right? Whether they recognize it or not. The Lord is saying they're not paying homage to the devil or God. They're paying the homage to themselves. They think that this is their own agenda. And because others are in on it, they're all using the thinking mindset. We're a group think. That's it, Lord. Thank you. Hallelujah. A group think. They're using a group think mindset. Okay? So they're not thinking about it in a spiritual context. However, the fact that they're even doing these things and saying them and thinking them in the first place, that's coming from a spiritual sounding board, whether they realize it or not. And it was the same with the Jews and with Hitler. Okay? Hitler was like devil's team. Jews were God's team. Okay, now today there's the citizens, civilians, like, the Canadians, the Americans, the Russians, whoever, and then there's the government who's in a higher authority power, like Hitler was, that's trying to call the shots and dictate and control. Okay, they're just doing it in a more subtle approach because these are countries that supposedly have a democratic government, right? So God is saying it can go either way. For those of you that are hoping for things to turn around and become, peaceful and wonderful, and for the Lord to turn over a new page, that's possible. That is within reach. The Lord wants you, it's fine to feel that way. For others of you that think that this is the end of days and that things are just going to go from bad to worse, that's fine too. There's nobody that has a right or wrong answer because it's up to God how things are going to play out, right? Back in World War II, some people were hopeful for, a change, right? Others were not. But we come to find out now, looking back on history, that a change did come. So the Lord is saying it can go either way. This could be the start of the end or the start of the beginning, like a new thing. Like this bad could come to an end or it can grow and continue. It can go either way. The Lord was asking me, what do you think would have happened if Hitler hadn't been stopped? What if he'd been able to fulfill his big plans and dreams? They were half-baked. He only got to half-bake or half do what he wanted to. He only got halfway. He didn't get where he wanted, right? Because he was stopped. And so with that being said is that there is a government agenda going on, and the Lord was showing me specifically Canada. This is a little bit of a snippet from the Canada word that the Lord, I spoke about a week or two ago, that the Lord wants me to give a word about Canada specifically. And I'm going to be honest, it's based on scripture. He hasn't led me to do it yet, but he will, but I'm going to just speak about it in this message here where he's saying, I'm going to be honest, the scripture he's showing me about it is not good. There is not good things in store for Canada, right now at this time and in the near future. This future could look like from today to 100 years from now. This future could look like from today to 10 days from now. This future could look like from now to 10 weeks from now. This future could look like from today to 10 months from now. I don't know how long the future is, right? So Canada is going to hell in a handbasket today and has been for the last few years. And their agenda is to go even deeper, farther, stronger on their way to the pit, okay? And it's for domination and control, like what the mindset Hitler had, just a modern day version of it. And so God is saying that this could go on for the next 10, 20, 30 years. But this could also go on for only the next 10 days or 10 weeks, right? It's all up to the Lord, the timing on things. This could be the end of things. This could only be a phase of things, right? A phase. And so it's really hard to say, but all the Lord was telling me for right now is that there's a corrupt agenda underfoot, and it's been underfoot for years. People have known this, but not everyone has known this. There's some people that either don't believe it or don't want to believe it, okay? And those ones are the ones that are still asleep. And for some of them, they're purposely asleep, like the Lord has them asleep on purpose. For others of them, they're asleep because they haven't been awakened yet. They're going to be awakened. They're slated for awakening. It just hasn't happened yet, okay? Others of them are asleep, and they're going to stay that way because that's their destiny, is to stay asleep, all right? Just like there were, going back to World War II, there were people that were going against the Jews, which were the devil's team, and then the Jewish people, which are like God's team, and then there were onlookers. They weren't on Hitler's side or Jews' side. They were just there, right? Those are the ones that just let things blindly happen and pass them by, kind of like neutral, the Lord is saying. They were like a neutral or a placebo, right? The placebo effect. That's how these people were, because they were asleep and the Lord allowed them to be asleep, because not every single person, it's just like Pilate and the Pharisees put Jesus on the cross, and then there was Jesus and his followers and disciples that didn't want him on the cross, so devil team versus God's team, and then there was the crowd that just looked on and cheered. They weren't involved on either way, okay? So I hope it's making sense. All these different pieces are coming together from the past to make what's happening today, okay? And so what's happened thus far has been a corrupt government agenda, yes. Baked and cooked by these higher authority government people on their own. But God has allowed this to come thus far, right? Even when the devil, so if the devil goes and say a tornado comes and takes out 100 people, just say, a natural disaster, okay? everyone is sitting there blaming God, blaming the devil, whatever have you, right? God is saying he did that. He allowed the winds to churn and the skies to open and everything to happen to do that, okay? So every single thing, good, bad, or ugly, God authorizes first. But he will send the devil to do the devil is God's minion. So God will send the devil as minion to go do devil work for God. And so the devil and his agents jumped in Hitler, and they've jumped into Carney and other government officials too. These are just the ones the Lord is showing me. And they have this group think, so they're not alone. They may have their own thought process and using their own authority and power and leverage to make things go off, but that they're also hitching it on and crutching it on other people as well as a group, okay? This is being done behind the scenes. So if you agree with this or understand what I'm talking about, this is confirmation. And if this is over your head and you think I'm out to lunch and it's not what I'm talking about, then, you be in your bubble. But this is what God is saying, okay? This is what it is. So again, it could go either way. Now, with that said, Canadian government in particular had a plan, a long-term plan of action that they wanted certain things to be at by this point in August 2025. They've been unleashing this plan over the last 5 years, actually longer, but the Lord is showing me specifically since 2020 COVID, okay? They expected to be at a certain level and a certain position at this time, and they're not there yet, okay? But they're taking the slow and steady, patient, methodical, strategic approach, okay? Again, they think that this is the wisest, most craftiest way to be, not realizing that when I talk about how the foxes get in the hen house through the foxhole and eat the chickens, the fox thinks, oh, I'm hungry, I'm getting my chicken, but God actually put the thought in the fox to think, I'm hungry, I need to go get me a chicken, you see? So the fox thinks that he's going in the hen house for his own agenda, but it's actually God that put the thought in the fox in the first place to go into the hen house to get the chicken to fulfill his agenda. So this is what these government officials are not understanding, is that nothing comes from our own thought process. It comes from God, right? No matter what. So this is who is directing everything, okay? And so they have this agenda, and they want to really, it's a really bad one. They want to really corrupt and control and make things terrible, horrible, and awful in a lot of places, but specifically in Canada. The Lord's given me a word about that and the scriptures to follow suit with it. When he leads me to, I will release it. They've already put forward a lot of these plans and actions. They have gone, some of them have been fruitful and came how they wanted it. Others have not. And that's for many reasons, okay? But the Lord said at this point, he's already awakened a lot of the ones that are slated for awakening. He's awakened them. For the ones that are supposed to stay asleep, they're still on track. They're asleep and they're going to stay asleep. They're on track too. For the ones that haven't been awakened yet, their time is coming, and it'll be sooner than later. Eventually, it's going to lead to an us versus them mentality, okay? Because there's some people that prefer to be awake at night, and some people that prefer to be awake during the day, okay? This is how the Lord's showing it to me. There's some people that are up during the day and sleep at night, but then there's some people that are awake at night and sleep during the day, okay? And for some reason, okay, I'm just going to say what the Lord's saying. He's saying nocturnal, and he's showing me the owl, and how I put the word out about Lilith the other day, and she's also phrased that in the Bible in the book of Isaiah as a screeching owl, okay? And that owls are nocturnal. And so he's saying the word nocturnal, that owls are asleep during the day and are awake at night. I don't know any of this. I will research this when I'm done the recording. But that's what the Lord was just saying mid-stride, okay? So he's saying nocturnal. So with that said, I don't know, that's what he told me to say. With that said, that's right? Some people up during the day sleep at night. Others are awake at night and sleep during the day. Some of these people want the ones that are asleep don't want the awakened people being awake, and the awakened people don't want the others being asleep. And it's going to cause them versus you versus them type of mentality, okay? Because they're going to see the glass as half full, and others are going to see the glass half empty, like I've been talking about lately. It's going to be the same glass of water, but two different perspectives, okay? And so it's going to start to cause where there's this uproar and uprising between people. And we've already started to see it where people aren't as agreeable as they used to be, right? The Bible talks about this too. But it doesn't specifically say, hey, it's because some of these people, these neighbors are awakened and some are asleep. But the Lord is saying that is what it's going to boil down to, okay? So not everyone's going to be awakened and not everyone's going to stay asleep. And so some have already been awakened. They're in their position that God has intended for them. Others are asleep and they're in the position God has intended for them. And others of them are in the in-between. They're asleep. God is saying some people are awake and going to go to sleep. Some people are asleep and they're going to wake up. And so this is God's still separating, working things out one way versus the other, okay? And so, yeah, so God says everything's going according to his plan. These government officials think things are going according to their plan, but it's actually all going according to God's plan. And that it can go either way. Like World War II, it could have continued on or it could have stopped eventually in its tracks. It did stop eventually in its tracks. What's going on right now with this spiritual, mental World War III, it can continue and go on ahead all the way like the government / Hitler intends it to or wants it to, or it could be stopped in its tracks as well, right? It's all up to God what happens. When things take an evil turn, that's because of God. When things take a godly turn, that's because of God, okay? So I'm going to leave this message here. I'll be back if the Lord leads me to with anything else. And I'll explain this in more detail when the Lord leads me to release the Canada word. I hope this finds you well. Take care, and God bless.